Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared and this is going to be a wild one. This is going to be pretty wild. So I have a number of things I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about all this crazy flooding that we're seeing across the world right now. That's like the new thing right now for the last week is flooding in all these countries. I've had some people comment that it's interesting that these are BRICS countries. If you don't know what BRICS is, it's a economic bloc uh, that essentially makes up Russia, China, India. It's I guess in 2024, Iran, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Brazil, and others. And we've talked a lot on the channel about this what you could call unconventional warfare. In this video, we're actually going to look at, I guess, the more technical name for it, hybrid warfare. I've done a number of videos talking about the weaponization of color revolutions. For example, the Arab Spring, when a bunch of Middle Eastern countries and North African countries experienced revolutions and uprisings and civil unrest, which we know that, a color revolution, it's essentially a tool that's used. I don't know all the methods, but it seems to be a way that a government or a military alliance can target other countries and influence the citizens of those countries to protest and to potentially carry out a revolution, a coup, right? So we've talked about that quite a bit. We've talked about how George Bush, all the way back, I think it was a 2003 interview with ABC, he said that World War III had already started, and he was referring to, um, what happened, in 2001, and I can't get too much into that, but I've shown that before on the channel, and yeah, I believe him. I think that World War III is essentially happening, and we just don't recognize it for what it is. I think a lot of people do, but there's a whole lot more people that don't, because it doesn't look like warfare used to look like. It doesn't look like World War One with trench warfare. It doesn't look like World War II with you know just conventional warfare and bombs necessarily, and nuclear bombs. I think when people think about World War III, they picture, oh, since we have nuclear bombs now, it's going to be just like nuclear bombs all over the place. That's going to be World War III. And I don't know. I guess it could lead to that. It could. That's everybody's concern. But I think that there's other weapons at these different nations' disposal that they're using, that are covert, clandestine. Uh, but I think if you know where to look, you can kind of put the pieces together. It's kind of obvious. You just have to do the initial legwork, and they almost kind of talk about it openly, frankly. So the way that I want to do this, I want to show you the updates, like these two new capital cities that I've added to my capital city spreadsheet. I want to take a look at BRICS and the G7 so we can maybe understand the context of what's happening. I want to look at, like I said, hybrid warfare. And then I want to look at satellites. Some interesting news stories about satellites. The image that I have here on the screen, this is from the James Bond movie Die Another Day, that had to do with a satellite called Icarus that was able to essentially redirect energy from the sun, and I think like concentrate it to where it became a weapon like what it looks like here on the screen. Interestingly, within this same time frame and with the same James Bond actor, in fact, his first James Bond movie, GoldenEye, was also about a satellite called Goldeneye. So we're going to look at that because a lot of times, if you'll notice, they put things in entertainment, and I think there's a few reasons why they do that. I think one of the primary reasons is because that's a way to kind of model your plans. You know, it's just like when you before you construct a building, you usually do like a small scale model, maybe like the city block or what it's going to look like in the city. You know, you do that so you can kind of plan ahead, look for any potential flaws or problems and stuff like that. And if you have Hollywood at your disposal, why not use them and say, hey, make a movie about a space satellite that can do these things, and want you to kind of like answer these few questions, but you figure out the answers. You just make your movie, but include these elements, and then that way you can kind of sit back, watch the movie, maybe even do a little research, maybe do some like polls with people, like, what did you think about this movie? What did you think about this part? I don't know, things like that. I think there's probably other purposes too. I think that Hollywood is essentially insidious. Um, it's powerful. It gets into people's minds. Uh, the people that have power understand this and understand that entertainment can be weaponized and can be a tool of manipulation in forwarding, your own goals. So, yeah, so let's just, okay, before we get into it, I've got the update on the Flood the Earth challenge. We're at 6,455 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. It shot way up. We had 63 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared since the last time that I updated this. And I can't remember, but there was a person that had essentially given me like an accrued update. They had been doing this for a while, I think, but finally gave me the numbers of how many they had shared. And I think it was 51, if I'm not mistaken, but they shared 51 copies of the Book of Mormon, just one person. So, and that's really good because not a whole lot of people get to that level, but I would invite you to, and at least try and get to 10. That's the channel goal. And then you'll notice that we have a new report of someone meeting with the missionaries, which brings us to 73 total. And for the month of September, over here at the far right, that's our first basically update for September between missionaries and baptisms. So we have one report of contact with missionaries for September, which is great. We're only at the beginning of the month right now. Okay, so consider joining this challenge if you haven't already, and if you already have, try to at least get to 10, please. Let's start out by looking at some videos, and then we'll start looking at these countries. Okay, so this is Fuzhou, China. We've already, in another video, looked at videos of Fuzhou, but just notice that it's China that's experiencing this. All right, a whole lot of flooding. Let's go up here. This is Turkey. From Storm Daniel, this is the storm that's affected Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria. All three countries essentially have this going on, insane flooding that's sweeping away people and cars and tables and garbage dumpsters, all sorts of stuff. This is also in Turkey. It's a wild scene. It looks like the apocalypse, and it's probably because it is. Here's Fuzhou again. Jim Yang says, for 4 consecutive hours, the weather station in Fuzhou has recorded rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters per hour, and landslides have begun to occur in some places. My gosh. Like I've said, these scenes all across the world, especially in Europe, are increasing. This is in Greece. This is in Athens. And if you know your geography, you know that Athens is the capital of Greece. So this is the new entry that I have on my spreadsheet. Let's head over to the spreadsheet really quick. Let me zoom in. So, zoom in. There we go. So the first entry that I had for September was Madrid, Spain, where they were experiencing this kind of flooding. And now we have Greece. We already knew a video or two ago that there was flooding in Greece, the country, but I couldn't find anything for Athens, but now I have. Now I have. So we have Athens added to the list. I have my source over here, or my reference. Okay, it is indeed happening. So I do trust that this is a truthful post. If it's not, at least I know that there is flooding like this in Athens, and I'll show you the news story in just a minute. Here we are back in Fuzhou, China. They are really getting hit hard. This is Volos, Greece, and you can see a bridge that's collapsed. It says the bridge that connects Karditsa in Farsala. Let me know in the comments below if you've visited any of these cities or countries. Here we are in Greece again, and this is in Athens. Just a really, really strong current going down the street. Let's see, this is in Greece, and you can see homes that are submerged in water. Water going all the way up to the rooftops. I don't think I see anybody on top of their house. I saw some people back there, like in an elevated area that overlooks this valley or whatever. Athens again. Daphne Tolis says flash floods in Piraeus on Wednesday leaves cars almost underwater. Hashtag Athens. I don't know if like Piraeus is a suburb or a neighborhood of Athens, but she did hashtag Athens, so I'm assuming it's at least in the metro area. There's this. I usually don't put too much stock into these kind of posts, but I just want to put this on your radar. This is according to Sprinter. China is mobilizing its military forces in the area of two cities located close to Taiwan. Don't know exactly what that means because Taiwan is an island. So let's go here. So when he says cities close to Taiwan, I don't know if he means like over here across this strait, maybe Putian or Quanzhou. I have no idea. And I don't have a way really to verify that, but I just want to have it on my radar. Oh yeah, 6.6 earthquake in Chile. But it doesn't seem to have affected Santiago, which is the capital city, so I'm not going to put this on my capital city spreadsheet, but a powerful earthquake, just so you know, and there's some from that. Here we are in Skiathos. We covered this city in that other video that I did. A dog that thankfully and somehow got on top of this roof. I was just thinking about rough. Okay, that's not funny. Almost all the villages of the plain of Karditsa, Greece, are underwater this morning. So here's some people on rooftops. All the villages. So that's plural. This isn't just like one village or town. I'd like to know how many, but this is actually kind of an ongoing event. It's not even over yet, so we may not get all the details until later. Here we are in Chile. Looks like this is a grocery store after the 6.6 earthquake. A fire. Oh, man, I need to... Let's see. Quito fire. Is there anything about this? It doesn't look like it, but Quito, Ecuador. That's the capital of Ecuador. Let's see. Forest fires break out near Quito. This is a week ago. Well, I don't know. I'll have to look into this later and see if there's anything to this. Anyway, fire there. Here we are. Don't know where this is at. This is probably Greece. I don't know. But the pigs are well, he looks like he's okay. But they're trying to save their lives. It looks like they're all okay. But that's not something that I expected to see today. Pigs getting on roofs to save their lives from this flooding. Here's another one. This is Athens. You see this person get swept away by the current. I haven't seen any reports that there have been any deaths from this, so I am assuming that she's okay. Here's another one from that same poster, Sprinter. New video showing the deployment of Chinese armored vehicles in the provinces bordering Taiwan. And I can only assume that means across the strait. However, I want to say one thing, you guys. Whenever you see movement of military vehicles like this, I would not immediately assume that there's a deployment or something like that. In the United States, it's really common for units to go to different locations in the United States for training. For example, here in the United States, we have NTC, National Training Center in California, I believe. I actually never went because on my deployment we didn't need to go to that, but I hear it's a horrible experience. Let me know if you've been to NTC, or the other one I think is JRTC in Louisiana at Fort Polk. Anyway, so it's typical for there to be, tanks, Humvees, LMTVs, other military vehicles, tracked vehicles going on trains or other things to get to another part of the country for training. This was something that was really big, especially during the Trump years, where people are like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to war! Look at this train full of armored vehicles." No, they're just going to training at NTC in preparation for their deployment or whatever. There's other times, by the way, that I've done this myself. I shipped vehicles from Fort Hood, which is now called Fort Cavazos, to other locations because I was in supply. And the Army is always moving around equipment. And so there were times that there were semis just like this that were moving vehicles that I had transferred to another. Not that I chose to transfer. I got orders, obviously. I just did the legwork to do all the stupid paperwork and all that. But this could also just be part of moving equipment around. So, all right, this is in Fujian, so this is in China. Wait, no, this is in Xiamen, Fujian. Yeah, this is in China. So water coming down as this person's trying to get into the elevator. Not something you typically see. Earthquake in Chile. What is this? Oh, here we are in Brazil, one of the BRICS countries. So BRICS is, what is it? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And someone had noted that, these BRICS countries are getting hit by these disasters all of a sudden within the last couple weeks. Which is, yeah, I can actually back that up. I'll show you. Okay, here we are in Chile again. Earthquake. Athens. Basically a waterfall. Athens. These people are like, they're seriously gonna have their dinner or their meal while this is going on? I wouldn't feel too safe. Whenever there's flash flooding, I think it's a good idea to not be in that area because you don't know if it's going to intensify. You can't play around with this. You can't just sit around at an outside cafe and think that everything's going to be okay. So I hope those people are okay. Istanbul. Gosh, this must have been some kind of like recycling or Well, probably like a recycling center, I would imagine, or something. Oh my gosh. Athens. Oh, we already saw that. Athens, Brazil. I don't know what this person is thinking. Again, is it really that important to get to the other side of the bridge? Now, I don't. To okay, to be fair, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe it's safer. Maybe it's like of necessity, but I don't know if that's like the wisest idea. Yeah, there you go. Then the bridge collapsed. Thankfully, he wasn't on that part of the bridge when it collapsed. Anyway, okay, so let's go through some of these stories really quick. So there recently, as in like the last couple of weeks, there hasn't been anything in South Africa, but in April 2022 there was severe flooding and landslides caused by heavy rainfall. On the 11th to 13th of April, caused the death of 448 people. That's no small number. Displaced over 40,000 people and completely destroyed over 12,000 houses in the southeast part of South Africa. It also severely damaged infrastructures, roads, health centers, schools. On April 18th, the president of South Africa declared a national state of disaster due to floods severity. NASA also covers this. This was not on my radar at the time, but update June 6th of 2022. In April 2022, the city of Durban, South Africa, and surrounding regions experienced extreme rainfall, leading to significant flooding and landslides. According to national authorities, at least 443 people died in the KwaZulu-Natal province in April, and over 40,000 people were displaced as nearly 14 inches of rain fell over 2 days. In late May, further heavy rainfall hit the region, causing hundreds of people on the east coast of South Africa to flee their homes. The impacts of these disasters were likely exacerbated by the effects of human-induced climate change, as well as the vulnerability of the local population due to poor socioeconomic conditions and lack of access to storm early warning systems. Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, called the floods, quote, catastrophe of enormous proportions and the biggest tragedy we have ever seen, and declared a national state of disaster on April 18th, 2022. So I haven't been able to go deep enough into this to see if like it broke records, if like that's just hyperbole, or if it actually is in the history of South Africa the biggest tragedy that they've ever seen. All I know is that within my lifetime, I haven't really heard of a lot of natural disasters in South Africa. I'm sure that they do happen from time to time, but we have to take that into account. Um, okay, here's the article that confirms that you had this flooding in Athens. This is from ecathimerini.com. The passage of the Daniel storm system through the Greek capital on Wednesday caused serious traffic disruptions, turning many central thoroughfares into rivers, while several metro and train stations were forced to temporarily shut down after taking in water. Again, this is like basically a staple of all these flooding events. Like all of them produce these images or stories of subways and metros, same thing, being flooded. On Central Vasilis Sophias Avenue, people were put at risk as they were swept away by the rushing waters. One video uploaded on social media showed a man struggling after he was swept away and receiving help from passersby. Oh, okay. New York Times. Why did I have this up? Oh, the online portal of Greece's weather service, meteo.gr, said the Pelion area had received 650 millimeters or over 25 inches of rain between midnight and 3 p.m. on Tuesday. It noted for comparison that the average annual rainfall in the Greek capital was around 400 millimeters, about 16 inches. Quote, "We almost couldn't believe the forecast," said Konstantinos Lagouvardos, research director at the National Observatory of Athens. "This is a number we've never seen before. It's unreal." Well, and maybe there's a reason for that. And maybe it's not because humans are driving cars too much and doing other things. Maybe it has to do with what we're about to talk about uh, with these satellites that do these different things. And this isn't just made up. I'm not like getting this information just from GoldenEye and Die Another Day. I'm going to show you actual articles that talk about this. So when their expectations are just like, whoa, we've never seen this before. This is unreal. Maybe it's because it's not natural. Maybe it's artificial. And again, not because of human caused climate change, but uh, by other nefarious means. Okay, we're getting there. I just wanted to show you this as I was doing the research for this. Rainstorm Daniel, the impressive cloud that covered Athens on Wednesday night. Yeah, that looks pretty unreal. It has a really low, uh, well, from this point of view, it looks like it has a pretty low cloud deck, which is down here. It looks like it's probably only at the most like maybe 1,000 feet up, maybe 2,000. I don't know, but it's pretty low looking. Okay, and then I needed to let you know about this. Heavy rain disrupts daily life in Ankara. This is from June 12th. So Turkey right now, as we just saw on X, is being hit by these floods and this rainfall. But I didn't see anything for Ankara. Only in Istanbul and other cities, but Ankara is the capital of Turkey. And it turns out that earlier this year, they were hit with floods like this. And so let me go to the spreadsheet. So we just talked about Athens. That's the most recent entry. But going back to June, right here, Ankara, Turkey. So how many more are there? How many other capital cities are there that I have not yet put on this tracker? Let's just say that if we begin March 31st right here, how many have I missed since that time? If you know of any, let me know. Send me an email, send me the article. But a lot has happened since March, just in capital cities. Record-breaking events, disasters, destruction, devastation. It's insane. And already for September so far, we already have 2 entries. For August, there were, I'm not going to count them up, but there were a lot, more than 10. Okay, yeah, so, okay, that happened in Ankara. Also, just want to put this on your radar, and this does go along with the whole, what we're talking about with this flooding, because if they're able to heat areas, because all weather is, okay, and I know this from my aviation weather days, when I went to school for aircraft dispatch, all weather is, it's the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. That is it. Weather is driven by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface, because a big part of it is water, and water absorbs heat differently than the land does. It takes longer for it to absorb heat, and then it takes longer for it to release that heat back into the atmosphere. Whereas land heats up faster and cools down faster. And then on top of that, you have mountains and you have valleys and you have bodies of water on the land, and on and on and on and on. Okay, so we're not living on a perfectly glassy surface where everything's like even. The weather would look much different than what we have right now. Okay, so if you have a way to heat a large area, large enough, I guess, to add to a hurricane, for example, to its development, then maybe it's not so science fiction-y. But we'll get into that in just a minute. So we have this hurricane right here. In fact, I should have pulled up Zoom Earth. Zoom Earth. So it's this one. Currently, it's a category 2, and the name is Lee. And it's headed this way, but according to this article that we're looking at, it has some spaghetti models here, and they're thinking that it's going to move northward and not hit the United States. I'm not going to read all this. This video is already gone longer than I thought, but I think Bermuda is potentially in trouble. But the one thing I do want to read is that this right here. The National Hurricane Center is explicitly forecasting rapid intensification, at least 35 miles per hour increase in maximum winds over the next 24 hours. By Saturday, the official forecast is for Lee to be flirting with Category 5 intensity as one of the most powerful hurricanes we've seen on this side of the planet this year. Okay, so it said it's flirting, or the forecast says it's flirting with Category 5. I guess we'll have to wait and see if it actually does become a Category 5. But just to remind you where we're at right now with hurricanes, I've revamped my hurricane tracker. Okay, before all I had was the Atlantic hurricanes, but I've decided to include Pacific, which of course it doesn't take into account other cyclones or other typhoons. It's all the same thing. It doesn't take into account hurricanes like in the Indian Ocean, and I don't think it includes the East Pacific, or no, the side closer to Asia. Okay, this is like on the east side of the Pacific, against like the United States and Mexico and stuff like that. So I have the Pacific for that area, and then Atlantic, the Atlantic, okay, and then I have the totals over here. So I just want to briefly look at this, just so you know where we're at. I'm going to zoom in. So far this year, we've had a total of 12 storms. Okay, that includes everything, including tropical storms and tropical depressions. Major hurricanes, we've had 2. A major hurricane is anything that's Category 3 or above, and those 2 happen to be Category 4 storms. We had 2 of them. The one that hit Florida, and then I can't remember the other one, but we had these 2. We have 2 Category 1s, but one of them is currently Hurricane Lee, which I guess according to Zoom Earth, if that's the most recent thing, it's actually now a Category 2. So basically we've had one Category 1 for sure, and then this one may make its way up to Category 5. The last time that we've seen a Category 5 in the Atlantic was last year, and then before that, we had 2 in 2019, 1 in 2018, 2 in 2017, 1 in 2016, then a big, a large period of time, a long period of time where we didn't see any Category 5s. And based on what I have here, the year that we saw the most Category 5s in the Atlantic was, I thought I just saw it. Well, I guess right here, 2005, they had 4. Okay. But if we look at Category 4s, 2020 had 5. And I think 1999 had 5. So those are the top 2 years, 1999 and 2020. Anyway, you can look at this any number of ways. 2020 was a bad year for hurricanes in the Atlantic. You can see the darker colors right here. And I think the worst year was 2005. Anyway, let's go over here. Now in the Pacific, we've already had one Category 5 hurricane, and it's been more active over there than in the Atlantic. 2018 was a pretty active year for the Pacific, and that's the year that President Nelson became president of the church. But even worse than that was 3 years earlier in 2015. Okay, come over here. It seems that the worst year, if you take both the Atlantic and Pacific together, would probably have been, well, 2018 in terms of total hurricanes. Let me see. And then for major hurricanes, it would have been 2015, and then after that, 2018. So anyway, that's where we're at. So we'll just have to see how it goes. All right. Now let's start talking about. Oh, and by the way, for both the Atlantic and for the Pacific, the hurricane season will end on November 30th. So we still have all of this month, all of next month, and then all of November. So there's still a lot of time left for more hurricanes. Okay, so let's talk about BRICS. First, let's look at this. So here are the BRICS countries: Russia, China, India, South Africa, and then Brazil. And then in the light blue, these are countries, I think all of them. Sorry, okay, so here's the current members. And then the new members are going to be Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. And then you have all these other countries that are interested in joining or have applied for membership: Algeria, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Honduras, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Palestine, Senegal, Thailand, Venezuela, Vietnam. So, yeah, Cuba. Yeah, these aren't the friendliest countries toward the West, and especially the United States. So you could say, now this isn't like a military alliance. This is a economic thing. It says here, BRICS is a grouping of world economies of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, formed by the 2010 edition of South Africa to the predecessor BRIC. The original acronym BRIC, or BRICS, was coined in 2001 by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill to describe fast-growing economies that he predicted would collectively dominate the global economy by 2050. So economically, it's kind of a threat if you're trying to stay on top, right? So you could see maybe, even though it's not a military alliance, maybe you'd see some back and forth between the West and essentially BRICS, you know, or the G7 countries or whatever in BRICS. The BRICS nations encompass about 27% of the world's land surface and 42% of the global population. So it's almost half. Brazil, Russia, India, and China are among the world's 10 largest countries by population area, and GDP. And the latter three are widely considered to be current superpowers or are still emerging. So Russia, India, China, sometimes considered superpowers. Okay, the BRICS were originally identified for the purpose of highlighting investment opportunities. Okay, so that's originally how this started. And again, the name was coined by this Goldman Sachs guy. But it looks like it's turned into something completely else. It looks like it's turned into a monster. The BRICS were originally identified for the purpose of highlighting investment opportunities and had not been a formal intergovernmental organization. Since 2009, they have increasingly formed into a more cohesive geopolitical bloc. with their governments meeting annually at formal summits and coordinating multilateral policies. Bilateral relations among BRICS are conducted mainly on the basis of non-interference, equality, and mutual benefit. Okay, whatever. The BRICS nations are considered a geopolitical rival to the G7 of leading advanced economies. So let's hop on over to the G7, and here you have it. So United States, Canada. Is that Guinea? I always get confused with these ones. There's Guinea and Suriname. I'm gonna have to look. Gosh dang it. South America. I'm ashamed. French Guinea. So Guyana, Suriname. So the one that's part of it is French Guiana. I think because I can't remember if it's still part of France or not, if it's like a territory. Oh, this is awful. I'm being exposed. Okay. You have the UK, France, Italy, Germany. And then the green ones, I think that's because it includes the European Union. Okay. The European Union. So, of which Greece and Bulgaria are a part. Greece, Bulgaria, currently being hit with that catastrophic flooding. And then Spain, just a little while before that, and Portugal a little bit. Okay, so G7 versus BRICS. The BRICS nations are considered a geopolitical rival to the G7 bloc of leading advanced economies, announcing competing initiatives such as the New Development Bank, the BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement, the BRICS Payment System, the BRICS Joint Statistical Publication, and the BRICS Basket Reserve Currency. Since 2022, the group has sought to expand membership, with several developing countries expressing interest in joining. BRICS have received both praise and criticism from numerous commentators. Okay, so now that we know about BRICS, why don't we go ahead and look at the capital cities spreadsheet. So we just talked about Athens and Madrid, but let's focus on BRICS. So we have right here at the beginning of August, Beijing. Heaviest rainfall since records began, 140 years. 140 years so far. 21 dead, 26 missing, almost a million evacuated. So Beijing at the beginning of August, and then Fuzhou in that area right now as we speak. So that's the C in BRICS. And then before that, the 19th of July, Moscow had this same thing going on. It was flooding. There was flash flooding in the streets of Moscow. So that's the R. And then we just talked about South Africa last year. So that's the S. And then as we were looking through X, we saw Brazil. And then India, I should have pulled something up for that, but India, I'm not so sure. I don't know. But it seems like there's almost always landslides and stuff going on in India. Let's see. Landslide, India. 2 weeks ago, Al Jazeera, landslides sweep away buildings in India. I'm not laughing at that. August 24th. Well, I'm not going to pull that one up because I think it might just be a video. Associated Press. Heavy rain and landslides have killed at least 72 people this week in an Indian Himalayan state. Okay, so yeah, we can add the I to it. So we have the B, Brazil, R, Russia, I, India, C, China, and S, South Africa. They've all been hit recently. In fact, they've all been hit this year, except for, and this is based on what I know currently, except for South Africa, unless they have had something. But I searched, I didn't see anything recent. But I guess you could say all of them this year, and then South Africa last year have all, mysteriously had these disasters happen, and it's because of human-caused climate change. That's why this is happening to these very specific countries. Now, of course, there's disasters happening in a lot of different places, but it seems like the places that are being the hardest hit are these prominent countries. Okay, so let's see. Did I have anything else? I didn't have anything for the G7. No. Okay. So now, why don't we go ahead and start talking about hybrid warfare? Okay. First, we'll start here. Then we'll look at the Institute for the Study of War, and then we'll look at a bunch of other things. Hybrid warfare is a theory of military strategy first proposed by Frank Hoffman, which employs political warfare and blends conventional warfare, so regular what you would think of soldiers and tanks and airplanes, blends conventional warfare, irregular warfare, and cyber warfare with other influencing methods such as I have to be careful what I say, but such as diplomacy, lawfare, so I guess using laws, and foreign. By combining kinetic operations with subversive efforts, the aggressor intends to avoid attribution or retribution. Now, my understanding, I watched this other YouTube channel a long time ago called Life as a Special Operation, and it's done by a former, um, well, he was in Army. He was in Special Forces in the Army. That's all I know. And he gave the difference between, you know, covert and, gosh, I think there were like three different things, but all I remember is that there was covert, and he talked about clandestine. And covert is where you do something sneakily, stealthily, secretly, and then after that attack is done, later you realize who did it and whatever. But with clandestine, it's like something happens for a particular goal, but it's not really detectable and you don't know who did it or necessarily that's okay. Should I just like look? No, I'm not going to look it up. But that's basically it. So that's basically what's going on, from what I can tell. Clandestine operations uh, on a large scale. Okay, so if it's like a hurricane or an earthquake or something like that, you can definitely avoid attribution and be like, no, that wasn't us. That's climate change. That's Mother Nature that did that. Um, and therefore, you limit retribution unless, the other side knows that it was you. They're like, well, we have that too, and we know that you did that. Anyway, the concept of hybrid warfare has been criticized by a number of academics and practitioners due to its alleged vagueness, its disputed constitutive elements, and its alleged historical distortions. The former U.S. Army Chief George W. Casey Jr. talked of a new type of war that would become increasingly common in the future. Quote, a hybrid of irregular warfare and conventional warfare, end quote. According to the 2017 inaugurated European Center of Excellence in Countering Hybrid Threats, quote, hybrid threats are methods and activities that are targeted toward vulnerabilities of the opponent, where the range of methods and activities is wide. So, again, let's look at this. When we look at, for example, let's see, signs, wildfires. When we see Canada having its largest wildfire season in recorded history, and that happens just 2 years after Russia had its largest wildfire season in its history, recorded history. And then before that, California had its largest wildfire of state history, both largest wildfire and worst wildfire season. Almost like there's like a back and forth, United States and then Russia and then Canada, and then this year, not only Canada, but an entire city, Lahaina, gets destroyed. Oh, and then it just so happens that Greece, we noted that they're part of the G7 because they're part of the European Union. I don't know. I can't say for sure, but it sure does seem suspicious to me. And I would really like to know about China. I think I looked it up one time and I know that they had like a. Are they on this one? There was something called like, I think it was like the Black Dragon Fire. That was the deadliest, but I don't know that China's as transparent when it comes to their disasters, that happen. So I don't know. Maybe they're on here as well. Anyway, this is an incomplete spreadsheet. I have to do more research, but this is what I have so far. But yeah, okay. So yeah, places that are vulnerable. And you have to wonder about all these different like train derailments, like the East Palestine oh my gosh, derailment earlier this year. Um, these like factories and food plants and um, chemical warehouses and stuff like that are being, you know, they're just it just so happens that they're catching fire, exploding, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe you could take it at surface value. Maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them are the way that they appear, but maybe some of them are not. Let's look at the Institute for the Study of War, Russian hybrid warfare. Okay, the Kremlin. Here we go. The Kremlin is even now waging a hybrid war against the United States. The Kremlin assesses that hybrid wars already dominate 21st century conflict and will continue to do so. The Kremlin believes it must adapt to win this struggle, profoundly shaping Russian military development and assessments of the future of war. The Russians define hybrid war precisely and coherently as a type of war rather than a set of means to conduct state policy. So they view it as war, not just, well, we're going to do this tricky thing and maybe this will kind of make things turn out in our favor. No, they view it as war, according to this. The U.S. discussion of hybrid war overly focuses on the means short of conventional forces and conflict that Russians have most famously used. The Russian soldiers without insignia, or the little green men who helped seize Crimea in 2014, and the proxies Russia uses in East Ukraine are most often the focus of Western assessments about how to respond to Russian hybrid warfare. So, in other words, if you remember all the way back to 2014, mysteriously before Russia annexed Crimea, there were these soldiers that just started popping up, and Russia's like, no, those aren't our soldiers. Those are, those are private militias from Russia that are there to support the Crimean people. And I actually don't know if those people, if they ended up being part of Wagner Group or not. But essentially, this paragraph is saying, look, the U.S. has been too focused on like, oh, they're using these, sneaky soldiers, or they're using Wagner Group. In this article is saying, no, it's not just, that's not all that hybrid warfare is. It's more than that. In fact, yeah, look at this next paragraph. The Russian conception of hybrid war is much more expansive. It covers the entire competition space, including subversive, economic, information, and diplomatic means, as well as the use of military forces extending above the upper threshold of the gray zone concept that more accurately captures the Chinese approach to war. I actually don't know what that means, but Okay, the Kremlin considers conflicts including Belarus, Ukraine, Syria, Libya, and Venezuela to be hybrid wars. And by the way, Ukraine, Syria, and Libya, that's all I can say for sure. They are countries that have had these color revolutions. Syria started with the Arab Spring. All the other countries, I think for the most part, have everything's kind of panned out when it comes to the Arab Spring, except for Syria. That's like an ongoing civil war. So, so basically, yeah, the Kremlin considers conflicts like the color revolutions in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, and then whatever is going on with Belarus and Venezuela to be hybrid wars. Okay, Russia sees hybrid wars as the main line of future military development rather than a temporary phenomenon. The Russian military maintains theoretical space for the idea of a traditional conventional war and does not assert that all conflicts are now inherently hybrid. It instead argues that conventional war is a legacy type of conflict that is increasingly unlikely in the 21st century due to technological changes and strategic power balances. That, to me, is kind of a scary thought because, again, when you have a war, like if you were to imagine World War III in the same style as World War II, where it's really clear who's fighting who, where the troops are, um, this different strengths of different militaries and stuff like that. Like at least you know like what's going on. You can see it with your eyes. You can see the reports. But with hybrid war, if the old way of warfare is becoming a legacy type of warfare, and now we're moving on to these other crazy ways of doing business, then that's maybe a little bit more scary because, like I said, if all these natural disasters that are record breaking and destroying so many different places, if that's actually the new type of warfare, then people are being affected by something that they don't even understand. They just think that it's Mother Nature and that it's climate change that's making things worse, not understanding that in reality, this is not even the case. Or, yeah, that storm may have hit you, but it wouldn't have been as bad if it wasn't for the use of these unconventional weapons. We're about to talk about satellites in just a little bit. Anyway, the Kremlin further asserts that Russia should shape its military and national security tools to optimize for hybrid wars, not only because they are increasingly common, but also because they are now more practical and effective than national conventional warfare. Let me show you an example of that. Let's go back to Arab Spring, Wikipedia. They have a nice article here, and there's a table that shows you the results of all these different color revolutions, essentially. So in Tunisia, that was the first one. What was the outcome? The overthrow of Zain el Abidine Ben Ali. Ben Ali flees into exile in Saudi Arabia. Resignation of Prime Minister Ghanouchi. Dissolution of the political police. Dissolution of the RCD, the former ruling party of Tunisia, and liquidation of its assets. Release of political prisoners, so on. So, for example, would it really have been? Now, I don't know all the particulars of like Tunisian and U.S. relations. I don't know. I don't know those things. But let's say that the U.S. or the West in general wanted to change things up in Tunisia. Well, you can't just declare war. You can't just go in and invade a country because you don't like how things are there. You want a different government that's going to align more with you. Um, And, because declaration of war, that's, at least in the United States, that has to go through Congress. It goes through a process. The president can't just uh, declare war. He can, I can't remember how it goes. He can essentially initiate a war, but for it to formally become a war, there's a certain window of time. I can't remember if it's like 2 months, 6 months, where Congress has to approve the continuation of an actual war and declare war, for example. So that's kind of that's a problem if you're a person in power and you have all sorts of plans for the world and what you want to do. But hey, if you can do it this way, if you can covertly or through clandestine means help foment um, unrest and distrust and anger toward the government, and you can help that along and support it, well, you don't have to go through Congress. You don't have to, sacrifice American lives. You don't have to do all this stuff. Uh, you can basically have them do it themselves. You can have their own people do it themselves by simply supporting the right side. And not only that, but in the case of the Arab Spring, imagine what a war would have looked like a regular war to achieve all these outcomes in all these different countries. That would have been a really big war. That essentially would have been World War III, I think. But it came and it went, and I'm not sure that they came away with all the outcomes that they hoped for. I don't know, but there was a lot of change in a very short period of time. Tunisia, Algeria, Jordan, Oman, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Syria, which is still ongoing, Yemen, Djibouti, Sudan, Iraq, Palestinian National Authority. So all these different countries and entities were affected. And again, I don't know if they achieved all their objectives, but they probably got mostly what they wanted by instigating this. You understand? So, hybrid warfare, psychological, psyops, psychological operations. Okay, the Russian military is therefore adapting to improve its capabilities to conduct hybrid wars. The Russian military is not attempting to hide its intent to conduct offensive hybrid wars. Russian military theorists write extensively and openly on general strategies and doctrine for offensive hybrid wars, and additionally discuss the development of individual hybrid means. The Kremlin's ongoing adaptations include efforts to, in do I want to read all this? Okay. Centralize all potential Russian decision-making bodies, civilian, military, media, and economic, to coordinate whole of government efforts. Sounds just like, like it says, centralizing decision-making across all those different domains. Adapt additional military theories and doctrine to enable the Russian military to conduct hybrid war as a core mission. Conduct society-wide information campaigns to improve patriotic consciousness, which the Kremlin assesses is essential to hybrid war. See, that's a very interesting thing, because we just talked about the Arab Spring and how and by the way, from what I gather, it was basically the West that instigated this, not Russia or Brics, this particular thing. So it's one thing to do it to other countries, but what happens when you do it to your own country? You shape the minds, or you shape the public opinion in your favor, and you have color revolutions happening in your own country. Think about what was going on in 2020, and there was a really popular movement that took off in that year, right? And I don't know who instigated that. I could see either Brics or the United States itself, people in power doing that. It was probably us that did it to ourselves. But and you also have to wonder about this thing that happened right here. Let me just draw it on the screen. Do you remember this that took off during the time of Trump? I found this to be a very strange thing. I followed it, I watched it, but I felt like there was like something really weird going on. And what the way that I feel about it right now is that, you know, we talk about the West and the East, we talk about the G7 and BRICS, but we've also talked about the globalists versus the nationalists. And it seems like when Trump came to office, that was a win for the nationalists because he was more of a nationalist type person. And I don't care to get into the politics, but maybe you can see why there was so much opposition to him because that's more in line with the other ones, right? That aren't so gung ho about globalization and the dissolving of countries and sovereignty and stuff like that. So it seems like maybe the nationalists in the United States tried to tried to do their own type of uh, color revolution, psychological operation, or something through that method that I just put on the screen. I think it's very complex, but it's kind of not at the same time. I think you can generally see the two main sides, and I don't know what they're trying to do. And I'm not calling either side good or bad because probably both sides have really bad things. For example, on the nationalist side with BRICS, I don't. China and Russia aren't typically known for their love of liberty and having an open society and stuff like that. But maybe in some cases they actually do better than us with some things. And then on our side, we have our own issues and our own strengths. So it's like really weird and really complicated. But that's just kind of how I see things. I could be off a bit, but so um, yeah, increase the adaptability and strength of Russian information campaigns to successfully conduct hybrid wars over many years. All right, and then there's a few other things, and I think that's it for this article. Okay, so this is where we get to GoldenEye, which was a 1995 film, James Bond film, and just really quick. So this is the plot. 9 years later, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Bond attempts to prevent Xenia Onatop, a member of the Janus crime syndicate, from stealing a Eurocopter Tiger attack helicopter. Jeez, that's say that 3 times fast. During a military demonstration in Monte Carlo, but is unsuccessful. Now, it turns out that the reason that she wants to get that helicopter, if I remember right, it doesn't say it here, but it's because that helicopter is immune to EMPs or electromagnetic pulses that basically fry electrical circuits. Okay, so they wanted this helicopter that was immune to an EMP. Returning to MI6 headquarters in London, Bond oversees MI6 staff monitoring an incident in Severnaya, Siberia, after the stolen helicopter turns up at a radar facility there. An electromagnetic pulse, or an EMP, blast suddenly hits the site, destroying it, and Russian fighter aircraft while knocking out some satellite systems in orbit above. The newly appointed M, that's like the chief, person, assigns Bond to investigate. After it is determined that the blast came from a Soviet-era satellite armed with a nuclear electromagnetic pulse space-based weapon, codenamed GoldenEye. So um, so basically, a relic from the Cold War. Let's see, golden. I thought I had this up already. GoldenEye satellite images. So here's like a picture of it, the GoldenEye satellite. That open image in new tab. That those are really great graphics. 1995, very realistic. So this was able to detonate an EMP from space and knock out facilities and stuff on the ground. Okay, so that was 1995. They make this movie, and then just a few years later, 7 years later, Die Another Day, also with Pierce Brosnan. Okay, at his ice palace, at his ice palace, and it's James Bond. This is talking about the bad guy, I guess. At his ice palace in Iceland, Graves unveils a new orbital mirror satellite called Icarus, which is able to focus solar energy on a small area and provide year-round sunshine for agriculture. Oh, that's nice. Bond and Jinx pursue Graves and Frost to the Korean Peninsula and stow away on Graves' AN-124 cargo plane. Graves reveals his identity to his father in the true purpose of the Icarus satellite. Oh, so it's not just for crops and farms. It's for something else. To cut a path through the Korean demilitarized zone with concentrated sunlight, allowing North Korean troops to invade South Korea and unite the peninsula. Okay, so these two movies, these are fiction, but like I said before, I think a lot of things actually make their way into movies with the purpose of using the movie as like a model, a way for you to kind of like envision different aspects of conducting that type of operation. Okay, so and then here's a picture from Die Another Day. You can see the basically the ray, the directed sunlight hitting the ground. You can watch this video. This is on YouTube, and watch this scene. And this is how we started this video. Well, let's go ahead and let's go to time.com. China, now this is in 2018. Okay, so in 2018, China plans to launch an artificial moon to light up the night skies. Oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm sure it's for peaceful purposes. The night skies might soon have company. Chinese scientists are planning to launch an artificial moon into orbit by 2020 to illuminate city streets after dark. So it's like to help their citizens that like have a hard time navigating at nighttime, just so they can see their keys a little bit better when they're like trying to get into their car. Scientists are hoping to hang the man-made moon above the city of Chengdu, the capital of China's southwestern Sichuan province, according to a report in Chinese state media. The imitation celestial body, essentially an illuminated satellite, will bear a reflective coating to cast sunlight back to Earth, where it will supplement street lights at night. Scientists estimated that it would be 8 times more luminous than the actual original moon. It will also orbit much closer to the Earth, about 500 kilometers or 310 miles away, compared to the moon's 380,000 kilometers or 236,000 miles. But the ambition plan still wouldn't light up the entire sky, Wu Chunfeng, chief of the Tianfu New Area Science Society, told China Daily. Quote, its expected brightness to the eyes of humans is around 1/5 of normal streetlights. Do you see any problems with this story? Why would the Chinese government spend millions of dollars, maybe even billions? I have no idea how much something like this costs, but at least millions of dollars. Why would they create an artificial moon satellite uh, to make it lighter at night, but the effect is only 1/5 of normal streetlights. Why would you spend millions of dollars to make it a little bit brighter at night? Is there that much of a need for that service, for that government service? It doesn't make any sense. That's really stupid. It's like when someone's telling you a lie and they're not a good liar. It's like, oh, well, so that, at nighttime, so our citizens can, so they can stop stumbling on things because they can't see that, we have a really hard time with that over here in China. A lot of people get injured because they have a hard time walking down city streets at nighttime. So we need to find a solution to that problem, and the solution is a satellite. Oh my gosh, that's so stupid. Um, Now, I don't know if this article just didn't mention it. I do think that there was somewhere else because I remember this story when it came when it came out that they wanted it also for like agriculture. Let's see, Chinese satellite agriculture. Um, Applications of satellite hypersensing. No, China launches remote sensing. No. Anyway, I could have sworn that that's the article that I wait. No, I don't know. I'm not going to look it up now. But okay, so so China is trying to tackle that problem. Later in the article, China's space goals are not unprecedented. In the 1990s, Russia experimented with using an orbital mirror to reflect sunlight on some of its sun-deprived northern cities. According to the New York Times, the project was abandoned in 1999, supposedly, after the mirror failed, supposedly, to unfold and was incinerated in the atmosphere. In January, American firm Rocket Lab launched an artificial star into space, the Times reported, but scientists criticized the Humanity Star, as the reflective mini satellite was dubbed, for contributing to artificial light pollution and cluttering in Earth's orbit. Okay, so that's weird. So when was this again? This was October 2018. Okay, a couple months before, August 2018, Politico, harnessing the power of the sun from space. NASA. Okay, so now we're talking about the United States in the same time frame as China. A NASA probe will be headed toward the sun this weekend to learn more about the fundamental properties of our star. But back here on Earth, the Pentagon wants to see if it is feasible and cost effective to harness all that limitless energy. Harness all that limitless energy with a massive satellite with solar panels and beam it back to Earth. Because, this isn't the plan right here. No, it's not. That's not it. We're concerned about the citizens. We're concerned about sustainability, right? Energy, the energy crisis. Why? Well, this is a typo. Political. Why are we doing this? The concept of solar power satellites. Now, this is not talking about powering a satellite with solar power. It's what we were just talking about, capturing the sun's energy and beaming it to Earth. So don't get confused. The concept of these type of satellites has been around a really long time. After the first oil crisis in the 1970s, the Department of Energy and NASA commissioned $20 million of studies for how solar power satellites could be implemented. The oil crisis ended, gas process went down, administrations changed, people stopped thinking about the future energy with cheapo gas again. It didn't get a lot of attention. Well, maybe not openly. Then in 2007, um, 5 years after Tomorrow Never Dies was put out, the Department of Defense put out a report from the National Security Space Office that examined solar power satellites as an opportunity for strategic study or security. The wars, there's like all sorts of typos in it. The wars we're fighting at the time, or the wars that were being fought at the time. Uh, okay, I'm just going to read it how it's said, how it's written. The wars we're fighting at the time were often had to send the wars we're fighting at the time, we often had to send fuel resupply through dangerous areas fraught with roadside bombs, insurgent attacks, and fuel resupply was very vulnerable. That was an amazing sentence. Well done. The idea that you might be able to send energy to a forward operating base or where it was needed directly from space was very attractive. Oh, okay, so at least the United States has like a more plausible or a better reason why you would need such a satellite. It's not just to like help the poor Siberians in the northern latitudes that don't get much sunlight. It's not to help you find your keys at night in China. In this case, it's so that you can send energy uh, to your war fighters, at their base. Like, okay, you guys, instead of us like getting you fuel and stuff like that, let's go electric and we'll beam you energy from space. Okay, there's also a sense with climate change. Oh, climate change. There's also a sense with climate change and with the increasing needs, not just with DoD, but at a civilization level, that there needs to be a clear path to exploitation, utilization of renewable energy sources. This is the way to get to the sun directly, where you don't have to wait for it to be daytime or wait for it to be sunny. Right? Because that's how solar panels work currently. They only take in energy when it's daytime, when they're exposed to the sun. But with a satellite, that's not necessarily the case. So space solar is often conceived as a source of energy that is clean, constant, and globally transmissible because you get the benefits of satellite coverage and also unlimited. In our solar system, there is nothing closer to an unlimited supply of energy than the sun. And that's it for that. So China, Russia, the United States, all interested in satellites that reflect the sun down to Earth for peaceful purposes, for more light, or to transmit energy, to troops at a forward operating base so they don't have to rely so much on fuel. Makes sense. Okay, now we're on the U.S. Government Accountability Office, GAO. They have a article about directed energy weapons, or DEWs. The acronym is DEW. Okay, the technology. What is it? Directed energy weapons use concentrated electromagnetic energy to combat enemy forces and assets. These weapons include high energy lasers and other high power electromagnetics, such as millimeter wave and high power microwave weapons. Unlike weapons that fire bullets or missiles, DEWs can respond to a threat in different ways. For example, they can temporarily degrade electronics on a drone or physically destroy it. See our 2022 Spotlight for more information on counter-drone technology. How does it work? Each type of DEW uses a different region of the electromagnetic spectrum. Light, right? The electromagnetic spectrum, it's the light spectrum. Both visible light and then invisible, obviously. This spectrum describes all the kinds of light, including those the human eye cannot see, and classifies them according to wavelength. Different types of electromagnetic energy have different properties. For example, The wavelength affects what the directed energy can penetrate, such as metal or human skin. Then it has like a little graph here. High power microwaves, millimeter waves, high energy lasers. All right, later on. Oh yeah, here's like another one. So it can cover kind of a wide area. Here's like a whole group of people, or it can be kind of narrowed in, or it can be just really laser focused. Dues can deny entrance to an area or prevent enemy forces or assets from functioning within an area. Dues used for denial do not cause long-term damage to targets, and when enemy forces or assets leave the area, they typically regain function or the effect is mitigated. For example, the Department of Defense's active denial system uses millimeter waves that interact with the water and fat molecules in a person's skin to create a heating sensation. During testing, the discomfort persuaded individuals to move away from the area. So, using millimeter waves, and I can only imagine that microwaves would also accomplish this as well, but these different types of waves can be used to heat water. And again, what do we have going on right now? We have these crazy storms that are behaving unusually, um, kind of being stationary over certain areas, and also strengthening beyond what scientists are used to seeing. Oh, this has never been seen before. This is strengthening so fast. Well, maybe the storm is having just a little bit of help from a satellite or some other platform that uses directed energy weapons, right? So we just had one in Spain, a G7 country. We just had one in Turkey and Bulgaria, G7 countries. And then in Russia earlier, a couple months ago, you had flooding in Moscow. And then you've had crazy flooding in China, in Beijing itself, hit by a typhoon, or in other words, a hurricane. And then in Fuzhou. And then, again, Brazil getting hit. So, I don't know, kind of curious. It's kind of interesting how that happens. Wanted to read a little bit from here. Wikipedia article about directed energy weapons. You may have heard this before. Okay, in the 1980s, U.S. President Ronald Reagan proposed the Strategic Defense Initiative Program, SDI, which was nicknamed Star Wars. It suggested that lasers, perhaps space-based X-ray lasers, could destroy ICBMs in flight. Panel discussions on the role of high-power lasers in SDI took place at various laser conferences during the 80s, with the participation of noted physicists, including Edward Teller. So if you've had an interest in space, and things like that, the military and just whatever, you've probably heard of the Star Wars program before. And that was the whole idea, using satellites to fire directed energy weapons, essentially. And this is an interesting thing right here that I haven't heard before. Alleged tracking of Space Shuttle Challenger. The Soviet Union invested some effort in the development of ruby and carbon dioxide lasers as anti-ballistic missile systems, and later as tracking in anti-satellite systems. There are reports that the Terra 3 complex at Sari Shagun was used on several occasions to temporarily blind U.S. spy satellites in the IR range, or infrared range. It has been claimed that the Soviet Union made use of the lasers at the Terra 3 site to target the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1984. At the time, the Soviet Union was concerned that the shuttle was being used as a reconnaissance platform. On the 10th of October 1984, the mission was STS-41G. The Terra 3 tracking laser was allegedly aimed at Challenger as it passed over the facility. Early reports claimed that this was responsible for causing malfunctions on the space shuttle in distress to the crew, end quote, and that the United States filed a diplomatic protest about the incident. However, this story is comprehensively denied by the crew members of STS-41G and knowledgeable members of the U.S. intelligence community. At the end of the Cold War, the Terra 3 facility was found to be a low-power laser testing site with limited satellite tracking capabilities, which is now abandoned and partially disassembled. So I don't know. I'm not going to say whether that's true or not or whatever, but it's here on in the Wikipedia page, and it's not outside the realm of possibility, as well as many other things that have probably taken place. Okay, and then this one. You may remember this story that came out. I remember this, and I was like, what? That is really weird. Havana syndrome. Havana syndrome is a set of medical symptoms reported by U.S. personnel in Havana, Cuba, and other locations, suspected by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine to be caused by microwave energy. Right? And we all know what kind of weapons use microwaves, and what were the other ones? Milliwaves. I already forgot. I need to see. High power microwaves, millimeter waves, and then high energy lasers. Okay. So this is a story that came out. When was this? 2022. Well, that's when this article is written. Havana syndrome symptoms in small group most likely caused by directed energy, says U.S. Intel panel of experts. The mysterious and sudden brain injuries suffered by a small group of American diplomats and spies overseas were most likely caused by pulsed electromagnetic energy delivered by an external device. A panel of scientific experts working for the U.S. intelligence agencies has concluded. Many of those people are part of the original group of diplomats and spies who first exhibited symptoms in 2016 at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, in Cuba. Intelligence officials declined to say whether any recent cases are part of the cohort of unexplained symptoms or whether they believe Americans abroad continue to be at risk. So you had that interesting happening. It seems that somebody used a directed energy device on our diplomats and our spies in Cuba. I think that's actually it. So is it, based on everything that we read, is it really too far-fetched to think that these kind of satellites, and who knows how powerful they are, how wide of an area they can affect, how hot they can, how hot they can raise the temperature to of different areas of the ocean? Is it really hard to believe that maybe that's what's going on and why, these particular places are being affected in this way? Retaliation, warfare, hybrid warfare, potentially World War III. I don't think anyone's going to come out and be like, okay, you guys, it is now officially World War III. These are the contenders, and this is how we win. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're at a point with technology, whether it's directed energy weapons or whether it's the internet, social media, and other things, where you can accomplish your goals for a lot cheaper and more efficiently and without accountability, if you do it in a secret enough way, and I guess if you're careful. Um, and you have to like when we're talking about this, you have to wonder if that isn't the reason why the Space Force was created. Space Force. Wikipedia. Oops. Wikipedia. United States Space Force. Uh, Let me know in the comments if you watched at the same time that I did when they created the Space Force. There was a live event, and I was like, holy cow, they're creating a completely new branch of the military. The last time that that happened was the Air Force, back in like the 40s. I don't know the exact year that the Air Force, I don't know, was it 1947? I want to say maybe it was 1940. Let's find out. Here's the link right here. 19. Yes, I was right. 1947. That's when the Air Force was created. That's when the Air Force broke away from the Army. Before that, it was the Army Air Corps. But right, that's what. Oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. Army Air, the U.S. Army Air Forces. Oh, and the U.S. Army Air Corps. So I guess it had a few different names. The U.S. Army Air Service. Thank goodness they changed that. U.S. Army Air Corps, and then U.S. Army Air Forces, which later became its own branch of the military, the U.S. Air Force. Okay, now we have the U.S. Space Force, which mostly separated from the Air Force. I know that there's many people from the other branches of the military that joined the Space Force that were moved over, but it mostly came from the Air Force. And in the beginning, it had the same uniform as U.S. Air Force personnel. Anyway, this was created just a few years ago, December 20th of 2019. And many people made fun of this, and they thought it was a stupid idea. And I myself, I've kind of been like, the Space Force? Like, why can't, because basically all that they really do is they maintain and operate, I think, missiles and satellites, and possibly other things that we don't know about. Maybe there's other things going on that we just don't know about. But with what we just read, about these different satellites, and who knows the array of different satellites that there are, maybe we have a larger inventory than what's publicly known as far as like weapons in space and different capabilities. Yeah, it is just wild. So these are all the reasons why I think that a lot of this is just, yeah, we're doing it, but it's not because we're driving our cars too much or littering or doing things like that. I think that there's hybrid warfare, and it's been going on for a while. And yeah, climate change is a great way to cover it up. Uh, and usually, there's always like you hit multiple birds with one stone. So maybe some of it, the whole climate change thing is to kind of cover up these covert programs and weapon systems, but other things too. You can leverage it for other things, which I don't really care to get into right now. Um, oh, here's their ranks. So the officers are the same as the Air Force and Army and Marine Corps. Um, the enlisted, I think this looks pretty good. I feel like this is visually appealing. So specialist 1 through 4, and then sergeant, and then technical sergeant. That's like the Air Force. Master Sergeant, Senior Master Sergeant, Chief Master. So it's very similar to the Air Force, with the exception of these first 4 ranks, Specialist 1 through 4. But then the rest of it roughly matches up with the Air Force. Okay, all right, that's enough. All right, that's going to be it for this one. I'd love to hear what you have to say below in the comments. If you ever come across a story of a disaster taking place in a capital city, please send it my way, and I'll add it to my spreadsheet, or anything else that you think is noteworthy. But that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.